Hello, it's Brad.
Hi, Brad. This is Rebecca.
Hi. All right, Rebecca. I am just getting set up, and it's saying show my screen, so I will show my screen.
Okay, great.
As I get set up, but I think if we've got the audio, and if we've got the visual, things should be working as planned.
Okay, looks good. It looks like we're still waiting for more than a few people.
Right. That's okay. Hopefully we get some good attendance. I know we've got an hour blocked. Do you typically, take that long? I usually go about 30 minutes and happy to take questions.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, all right. Always kind of play it by ear. The more questions, the longer happy to go.
Okay.
Hey, Brad, it's Mark Steinhardt. How are you?
Hi, Mark. Good.
Good. Hey, so I work with the advisors on the practice management side and business development side and whatnot here at the office of Premier. And I know that there's some benefits to using Riskalyze that when you're done, if you don't mind, if I bring up some questions for you to maybe ad lib and share with the advisors.
Yeah, I like the idea quite a lot because I may not cover things or may not, put them in the context of your business. So I like that.
Okay, great.
And I will, just so you know, so this will be sort of a combination, an overview of Riskalyze, but definitely focusing on kind of the new capabilities we've delivered. There's certainly an overlap. And I'll cover some of the core capabilities, but I'm kind of thinking this is, a chance to highlight new stuff and show people, what's accessible now. There's some things that aren't part of the contract that I can show as well. So see if you're interested in that. But by all means, we can stop. I'll happy to take questions along the way as well. So if that works for you guys, but of course, taking questions at the end works too.
Great, thank you.
And it looks like we still are waiting on a few. So if you want to give it another minute or two, if everyone's okay, and then just go ahead and get started.
Okay, sounds good. Should I wait for the cue from you, Rebecca? Is that?
No, you can start whenever.
Ah, I see. Okay, perfect. All right. Well, I'll get going here. So happy to join your conference call. I'm Brad from Riskalyze. I'm the account manager for Premier Wealth. We haven't done an event like this in some time, so happy to give you less an overview of Riskalyze overall, but more with an overview with a focus on new capabilities. There are capabilities in the platform you may not know about. You may wonder why we added what we added, so I'll try and give you some context for what we've done over the past several months, a little peek at a couple things from the future, and also take questions, as we go here. I'll spend the time in the product kind of browsing around an example. If you got questions, feel free to post those. I'll try and answer those along the way. But let me start at the beginning, as they say. The way we increasingly characterize Riskalyze is that it helps advisors do three things. The first one being that driving risk alignment between the client's tolerance for risk and their portfolio. That's kind of our classic capability. Have the client complete the risk questionnaire, score the portfolio, and find out, is there a gap between the two? If there is a gap, that kind of takes us into the second category, which is providing you guys tools to adjust the portfolio or better understand the portfolio from a risk perspective. We have stress tests, we have heat maps, we have a number of what we call portfolio analysis tools that you can use as you try and understand the portfolio and as you try and build a better portfolio that fits more in alignment with the client risk tolerance. So that's in the second. And then the third capability is now more along the lines of implementation, and this is again some newer capabilities we're delivering. They usually fall into the category of autopilot, and it's all about implementation. Now that you've analyzed a portfolio, perhaps proposed a portfolio in the system that better aligns on the risk perspective, you'd like to manage to that portfolio, to that target. You can set a target on a portfolio, and you can have autopilot in its trading technology keep you updated as to when an account drifts out of balance, and also when you need to make some trading decisions around that tracking of target portfolios. So those are the three capabilities on the platform, just to set the scene. And now I'm gonna start kind of using either jargon or lists here. So apologies there. But the product, a couple product additions that are important to keep track of. One is the Pro Edition. That's the core capability. That's, I believe, what everybody on the phone has. And then just sort of listing the capabilities here. They should all look familiar to you. They all fit around those sort of three jobs: that risk assessment, that portfolio analysis, and retirement map. Around that idea of we're gonna help you guys determine how much risk someone wants, how much they have in their portfolio, and how much they need as you start to simulate retirement situations. That's the core capability. But increasingly what we're doing is adding features, not so much every month, but every quarter or so. We definitely deliver some features. They come online. Some of them are kind of quietly released and you stumble across them. Others come with some great fanfare. But I'm going to go through those, and that's on the right side of the slide here. You can see the list. So a few months ago, early in January, in fact, we required a switch to a new user experience. It included some comparison views. It included some new analytics, the GPA, which I'll go into. It included new ways to manage household situations with the risk questionnaire. We just recently sent an update to our mobile app, and there's a new capability toggling on, toggling off accounts that I'll show you that's really quite nice as you do some what-if scenarios or as you look at comparative situations for either proposals or for the current portfolio. You can turn on, turn off accounts. So let me go through those features just to make them real. in a portfolio. So I've logged into my Riskalyze account. It all should look familiar to you. Let me back out to my main page. It hasn't logged me out, and it hasn't. And I'll pull up Sarah and James Braddock's client profile. So this is kind of completed. We've sent out questionnaires and they've returned them. We've loaded a current portfolio, perhaps synced it to a custodian, and we built a proposal in the middle on the right, and we prepared a retirement map, and in fact, we've even sent them check-ins. A notice sent every month or every quarter that gives you a little bit of feedback about their comfort with markets and comfort with their financial situation. So this is a completed profile. Should look fairly familiar to many of you. But if you step back maybe 6 months ago, this may not have been as familiar. We introduced this overview page, and that was one of the things we've added to the core capabilities of the platform. And how might that become useful? Well, it helps. Mostly we'll focus here on the current portfolio and the proposed portfolio. It lines them up and lets you compare it along multiple dimensions. You couldn't do that before without taking extra steps. So right now we've loaded a current portfolio, risk number 67, proposed portfolio, risk number 55. And we can also compare it along other dimensions. That GPA metric that I mentioned, I'll come back to that, is included for each portfolio. The potential annual return, so a return figure is included, a dividend rate, a dividend percentage, and then an expense ratio, as well as asset allocation numbers. So what you can do at a glance is compare current portfolio, risk number 67, with one that has a lower risk in this case, has a higher GPA, that's generally a good thing. It has a higher potential return, a higher dividend, and a lower expense ratio. So it's a Goldilocks situation. And that really comes with some additions of alternatives to the portfolio, in this case, the proposed portfolio. But something that you can do that you couldn't do, again, as easily a few months ago was change the proposal. You can have multiple proposals. And what you could do is come in and say, well, what I want to look at is, I'm going to go back and I tweaked the initial portfolio. What did that tweak look like? Well, I'm going to change that proposed portfolio. Oh, that's right. That was a risk 54. Well, that's fine. But we may want to look at that and consider that. But I'm going to toggle right back to my proposed portfolio with alternatives, and everything is updated immediately, and you get that snapshot view. So the overview and the portfolio comparison are relatively new, and hopefully you're sort of taking advantage of that. But what I wanted to highlight there was what you get in the comparison view and how you can change the proposed portfolio pretty quickly, again, to do some comparisons and to get a high-level overview. That overview contains the GPA. The GPA is a new metric that we launched late last year, and you can think of it as it is a risk-adjusted return measure. It's modeled after the idea of a GPA from academics, right? Everybody knows a GPA from 1 to 4, or in our case 4.3. Everyone understands that metric. So what we do is we're helping you assess the efficiency of a portfolio. Is it using its downside risk effectively? And specifically, the return is divided by the downside risk, and we get a risk-adjusted return measure, not unlike Sharpe ratios and other metrics, and then we put it on a scale from 1 to 4.3. So in this case, we've got the portfolio on the left has a GPA of 4. That's actually quite good, but the one on the right has a 4.2. So that's a bit better. But think of that as the efficiency measure of the portfolio. We've got other efficiency measures under the stats capability. I'll come to that in a moment. But the GPA is one of those headline metrics available in the product. If you'd like more on GPA, use this sort of highlights the help functionality of the product. If you go to the help center on the right side, click on help, and if you type GPA, you'll get 3 articles, and you can pretty quickly go into an article, which also contains a short video from our CIO that describes the GPA. So just kind of highlighting the help capability in the platform for, in this case, a metric that may not be very familiar to you. We have 3 articles on it. One of them includes a video as well as some text and screenshots around it. So nice capability there to use. Let me close that moment. So that's the GPA and the overview and the comparison view. Now, if you look at this profile, you go in the upper right and you see, well, this usually, James and Sarah Braddock, they usually have a risk number next to their name. In this case, they have a little risk risk number dialog box with an orange button and a circular and a couple arrows. What does that mean? Well, it means that you haven't actually reconciled, or there's a pending reconciliation of the risk number. And what does that mean? Well, a few months ago, earlier this year, we added the ability for you to better households in Riskalyze. And again, that comes into play here, where you can actually send multiple risk questionnaires out for one household, have them all come back. In this case, Sarah has one questionnaire. She came back as an 82. James, we sent him a questionnaire to his email address. His came back as a 50. If there was a third person in the household, we could have 3. You can have as many questionnaires outstanding and as many questionnaires as you'd like under one household. But of course, it does come with this idea that you need to reconcile that. So we have 2. Let's just take our simple case, James, Sarah Braddock. They both completed the questionnaire. What is the household risk number? Which is the one that you'd like to go with? Well, first, this is the basis for a great conversation. Sarah's more risk tolerant than James is, but who's going to make the decisions? Do you want to split the difference? So I clicked on a button that said update the risk number, because we do need to approve it. We do need to reconcile it. We do need to account for the fact that we have multiple opinions in the household. Surprise, surprise. And what we could do here is say, well, James is going to be, he's going to be making the decisions on behalf of the 2. We may want to go with his risk number. We may want to go with Sarah's risk number, since she may be, she may also be a heavy contributor to the decision making. We could split the difference. We could do a number of different things. So we're less prescriptive about how to reconcile those. We give you some tools here, and more than anything, we give you the ability now to track the risk number at the household level. I'm just going to go with James's risk number to make it simple. But householding is sort of new and improved in this version of Riskalyze. You send out multiple questionnaires. If you work with investment committees at endowments, for example, you have 10 committee members, get all 10 of them to take the risk questionnaire, keep them under the same client profile in Riskalyze, and compare and contrast their risk numbers as they work together to make investment choices for the endowment. And that might spark quite a nice conversation around how they're managing the investments on behalf of the endowment. So that's another capability, is multiple opinion. One that I won't show you, but I'll mention, get back to my board profile, is the mobile app. So we just updated that recently. We just had a press release on that. So if you'd rather not use a laptop and rely on Wi-Fi, you just want to use a mobile telephone, for example, we've got a new app that helps you as you're on the go to review some things. It doesn't have all the capabilities you'd get in a browser, but it does have some very, very relevant capabilities that you may need around the questionnaire or around check-ins as you are on the go. So have a look at that. The last item from a core portfolio, a pro perspective, is toggling on or toggling off accounts. So I'm going to go into James and Sarah's portfolio. I already loaded this with 3 accounts. And this may look different now to your instance. We haven't released this capability yet. I'll give you a preview. But you can expand and collapse individual accounts. You can expand and collapse all accounts. And importantly, you can choose which accounts to look at. You may say, well, I only want to look at this large retirement account. I'd like to put aside all the other accounts, not delete them, not disable them, but really put them at the bottom and say, I'll come back and look at those later. And then you can also include them. You can add them one by one, and all the information in terms of the risk number, all the portfolio analysis tools on the right side will get updated based on accounts as they get unmuted. That's the word. So that's really a nice capability. Will help you with scenario analysis for sure. And as you look at making some changes, perhaps you get 2 accounts, you're not quite sure which way to take those accounts as you're proposing. This capability works in the current portfolio as well as in the proposed portfolio. So quite a nice capability that will be out before the end of the quarter, I believe. So look out for that. So all that capability that I just mentioned, it's all in the core product. It's all in the product that you've got. Hopefully, if you're used to the functionality, at least this gives you some background or some context to why it was built and what it can do for you. I'm going to toggle now back to my slides as I kind of shift gears and say, well, we looked at what's new with Pro. That's part of your capabilities today. Now, what about maybe a Premier Edition? So you may have heard about this, this edition of the product. It is the Pro Edition plus 8 features. So we've bundled some features together that most of them extend capabilities on the platform. So they're not part of the, a core set that you would need to kind of follow that wants, has, and needs around the risk number perspective. But it can drill, these features will help you drill down, explain things maybe more in alignment with how you think of the portfolios and clients, or maybe it does add some capabilities as well. So these are the 8 items. I'll go through several of these, or a few of these. I won't go through all of them. I'll start at the top with the more broad capabilities. We've added enhanced advanced portfolio stats. What is that? Well, it's some modern portfolio theory information that you'll find in other sources, but kind of condensed to a one-pager that allows you to compare and contrast strategies. Maybe you're following a few different strategies. You want to compare and contrast model portfolios. You decide which portfolios go into the stats module, and then we'll present some information back to you, again, around downside risk, around correlations, around those things that are a little bit more technical. Second item, and I'll show you these as well, is timeline, and this is a module in Retirement Map that lets you add deposits and withdrawals and change risk numbers as you maybe approach retirement. So it makes Retirement Map a more dynamic tool. Retirement Map is that light financial planning tool that lets you put a probability of success on a retirement plan. So we've made that more realistic with timeline. I'll show you that. Retirement plans for anyone managing 401k, 403b plans, it's a challenge to use Riskalyze at scale. That whole module called Retirement Plan lets you manage the participant list for multiple 401k plans or 403b plans. Asset sync and data sharing, let me touch on those two. Asset sync is a way to pull in held away assets securely. If you'd like to get a complete picture of somebody's assets, all prospective client or the client needs to do is to type in their credentials to an account. We will pull in that information from a held away account, included in the analysis as a once-off. You don't need to know what their username and password are. That's all done by the client. But what you get out of that is the account details or multiple account details via asset sync. And then data sharing, if you share model portfolios or clients with others, we have a data sharing capability in the platform. And let me go through a couple of these in the product. So what do some of these look like in Riskalyze? Let me go back to our client profile. His name is Sarah Braddock. Now, the stats module. So like I mentioned, there's portfolio analysis tools that help you do job number 2 in my introduction there. And if I go into their portfolio and have a look at it, it has the 3 accounts, as I mentioned. And we're going to expand those so we can see them. They're not very long accounts, so to speak. There's not much there, but $500,000 in total. Now, you've got portfolio analysis tools, a risk reward heat map. Want to see some information about the risk level at each individual position, as well as the contributions to the overall return in green, contributions to the overall risk in red. You've got portfolio analysis tools like that. And stress tests is another one as I work my way across this bar here. We've got scenarios, and then we've got stats as a module. So pick this portfolio with 3 accounts, and that's the baseline that I'm going to use for the stats module. The stats module will give me things like the trailing return on the portfolio. And in fact, I could change the accounts that I'm looking at here as well. I won't do that at the moment. But maybe more importantly or more broadly, not just looking at past trailing returns, but we could actually model the performance. And this is where you might begin the comparison. We can pick a time period, let's say the last 3 years. We have our portfolio as the starting point, but we can now look at a benchmark portfolio. We can look at a proposed portfolio. We can look at the market. We can look at, well, I clicked add comparison. We can look at any portfolio you'd like for comparison purposes. Let me add another one. So the list will grow. What does it provide you? Well, it models the performance of all these portfolios for the time period selected. Modeling being rebalancing on a quarterly basis. There's some structure that's brought to this. You get a sense for the performance. Well, you get a sense for more than the performance across all of those portfolios. You get a beta measure. You get an R-squared measure versus the benchmark selected. Change the benchmark. batting average, Sharpe ratio, standard deviation, drawdown, and total return on those portfolios. So comparative stats as well as the visual that adjusts to the time period selected, that gives you a sense to, for what's driving this portfolio. Maybe you prefer the metrics here, or you could also prefer a visual that you may use to illustrate a point to a client. I'll scroll down and look at the other aspects of stats. We have a correlations module here that looks at the correlations of the positions in the portfolio. There's only 4 asset class type ETFs in this portfolio, but you might want to understand SPY is one of those positions. We now report the correlation across all positions in the portfolio. There's only 4 in this one. And you see that bonds, as measured by the AGG, and stocks as measured by SPY, they have basically a 0 correlation. And commodities, DDC, and the SPY has a correlation of about 0.6. And real estate is the IYR, and that's about a correlation of 0.8. So you get a feeling for what's driving the risk of the portfolio, where concentrations are coming in, and where diversification benefits come in as well. So the visual helps you then really just look at it from a pictorial perspective. Maybe the numbers are a little too detailed. You're just looking for the big visuals in terms of where are the small correlations or low correlations, and then where are the high correlations, the bigger correlations. A couple more points on the stats module. We report to you the benefit of diversification in your portfolio. We just touched on the correlations there. If there were no correlations less than 1, if it was a concentrated portfolio, everything moved in lockstep, you'd have a risk number of 81. But the portfolio does have a risk number of 67, because in this case, perhaps you can demonstrate the benefit of the choices that you've made in the portfolio as they pertain to diversification, which reduced the risk number 14 points. So that's another capability in the platform. The card next to it shows risk return information, kind of a classic view. Risk along the bottom axis, the x-axis, reward along the y-axis, and it plots the portfolios that I picked at the top over the period that I picked up above, and it shows me the risk and return characteristics on all these. So you can kind of start to dial in, well, what risk return characteristics do you want for your client, given now this additional information here, and you can control that list. Again, I'll go back up. Here's the list where you can add comparison. So this is the stats module. There's some equity sector allocations, bond sector allocations, and so forth here as well. But it's about 2 pages if you were to print it of statistical information. So that's item number 1 in Premier Edition. I'll shift gears and go to the second item on my list, which was Timeline, which are expanded capabilities in Retirement Map. So not everybody uses Retirement Map. Retirement Map itself models the accumulation-decumulation phase for a client, lets you set some parameters about the portfolio that you want to model in that, the savings that you want to include in that plan, retirement year, and then withdrawal rate. And feedback we got was that that's nice, but boy, life happens along the way. Can you add events to this? Like college tuition might be a big expenditure. Can we add that? Now with Timeline, as we call it, the answer is yes. We can add events. Prior to this, we couldn't. So you can add deposit events and withdrawal events or portfolio risk adjustment events. The last one being something you might want to do about retirement time when you dial down the risk on the portfolio. Up until now, you've had to set risk number on the strategy and keep that in place at all times. So what might this look like? Here's our client, James and Sarah Braddock. They've got $500,000. They're hoping to retire in about 15 years or 16 years. They have a decent chance of success, but we haven't factored in some of their life events. We could add in college tuition for their son or daughter. That's now affecting their probability of success. We could model in the fact that the risk number is going to be lower come retirement time from their 50, 56, or 67 actually for the portfolio, down to 40 perhaps, or whatever you'd like to set it. You can set that to anything. But remember, we have Social Security coming online as a benefit later on. So you can toggle on, toggle off these events in Retirement Map, and of course you can change the selected portfolio as well. So a lot of scenario analysis you can do with Retirement Map. I'm going to choose proposed portfolio with alternatives. So now we went from a simple scenario with their current portfolio with a 77% probability of success to now modeling their financial life here, a little bit more detail, and giving them a lower risk, better portfolio gives them a higher probability of success. So that is Timeline. These features that you can add to Retirement Map, as many as you like, turn them on and off. They can be repeating. You can control the start date. So quite a lot of flexibility there. Retirement plans was my third item on the list. I won't go there, but there's retirement plans here that lets you import participants in 401k, 403b plans. Asset sync is a way to add assets to the account. Let me go to the portfolio, just demonstrate that, or at least touch on it. Let's say load the portfolio through the course of the conversation, through discussion around the Retirement Map. Maybe you learn that there's a fourth account for Sarah and James, and maybe it's another brokerage account, right? As you have that discussion, you can add the account. You can add an account, and you can use Asset Sync. So I'm just browsing now to the way to get to Asset Sync. Asset Sync says enter credentials. It's going to launch a new window, let you select the financial institution that it's at. Presumably this is done with, client in the office or certainly on the telephone, where you could send them this link or share this link with them, have them identify which financial institution, have them enter their username and password. You don't need to know this. We don't store it. What it's going to do is pull in then the account details. So you could add that fourth account. You may not manage it. That's not the point. The point is to get them a better understanding of you and them have a better understanding of the portfolio risk, how that affects their maybe retirement plan. Retirement map, their overall retirement situation. So Asset Sync is another way to discover held away assets, and then of course how they have an impact on the portfolio. Data sharing is a way to share clients with colleagues. If you manage a book of business, you may want to share client profiles. You can share that, and you can share model portfolios. The last item, so I went through, I'm going to toggle back to my slides. Apologies for lots of text here, but we went through a few of these. These are all available under Premier Edition. We can add that to your account if you'd like, or if you'd like to see more about it, let me know. My contact details will be here at the end, or certainly folks in the home office can reach out to me. Now, one more item before I move to autopilot quickly is the integration. So integrations are kind of the unsung hero of productivity and Riskalyze, and of course working with multiple pieces of technology, right? What I noticed was a number of you on the phone have integrations with a custodian, Schwab being the most popular, with financial planning tools, with eMoney being the most popular. That's the red check marks next to these, and also Redtail as the CRM. So those seem to be the most popular amongst the audience here. We've got integrations with 60, maybe even 70 partners, and they're all available in the account. It's a really big productivity aid, whether it's around CRM, whether it's around keeping accounts updated. A lot of our customers use that custodial integration, or if they have a consolidation tool or a trading tool like an Orion or Black Diamond, we can connect to those as well. So it's a really powerful productivity tools in the integrations module. That's available as part of the core product. Now, just a few words about autopilot. So the third job we help the advisors do and is we call it autopilot trading is the module. It is that implementation part of the business. How do you take a proposed portfolio, for example, and implement it? Well, we connect to custodial feeds, as I just mentioned in the integration step here. You can put any or all, one or all of your accounts on autopilot. Set a reference portfolio for that, and we'll track the portfolio vis-a-vis its reference, and we'll tell you when it's drifting out of alignment. Maybe the model portfolio gets updated. You may generate trades to bring the account back in balance. You can do it again for one account. You can do it for multiple accounts, but it is that trading technology that helps keep the portfolio, the account in alignment with reference portfolio, kind of completing a little bit of a loop where you go from helping someone understand what risk tolerance they have to building a portfolio that matches, and now to monitoring it ongoing and surfacing the trades to the advisor to approve, and then send them all in bulk if that's how you want to do it over to a trading platform. to complete those trades. That's autopilot. And I'm not going to show autopilot here, mostly in the interest of time, but if anybody wants to see it, let me know. I can show you examples of the trading dashboard, how you can manage those portfolios, or review or monitor those portfolios as they stay in alignment or as they drift out of alignment. That is autopilot trading as our third leg of the stool, so to speak, the third job we help advisors do. We have a whole bunch of resources for you. I touched on some here today. Here's a list. I am Brad, your account manager. I'm happy to take questions here, as many as you'd like at this point in time, or if you'd like to reach out to me, there's some contact details here, or you can get those through the team at home office as well. Are there questions at this point? And I'll check my panel, which I haven't been doing here along the way. Are there any questions about new capabilities, what I showed you, anything you've been familiar with from the past? Happy to take any questions.
Brad, excuse me, Brad, it's Mark. So one question I have is, we manage models here in the office that we make available to our advisors throughout our that are affiliated with our branch family, and we get questions from the advisors that utilize our models. Hey, can you send us the models through Riskalyze, right into our Riskalyze subscription? So, in other words, instead of telling them, well, you got to manually put in all of the models on your end, is there a way to just somehow connect to where they can receive the models in their Riskalyze subscription as well?
Yeah, and we can do that, and that's very, very common with enterprises. I noticed it's not part of the default setup for Premier, so let's have that conversation after the fact. It's part of the data sharing module in the product, and you can share peer-to-peer, or you can share enterprise to advisor. So happy to show you how that works, but right, it's centrally managed, broadly distributed to any and all advisors that you'd like. There's the enterprise capability is actually quite nice there in terms of, again, productivity and keeping everybody with access to the latest and greatest version of the model portfolios. So definitely it's possible to do. Well, we can talk about how to add that to your implementation.
So another question I have is on the check-ins.
Okay.
So with regards to the check-ins, I know that you have the ability to do monthly or quarterly check-ins, which I believe, if I understood correctly, is there's an email that goes out to the client, and it says to the client, this is your score. I guess, is that what they would see right there?
Yeah, they would see some of this in response to the question. So they would, if I said, sorry, let me get oriented here. So if I went send check-in now, and I think if I look at the top, this goes to my email. It'll be a very simple email that presumably as part of the discussion, the advisor would have maybe given an example to a client. But it's an email that says, answer 2 questions, thumbs up, thumbs down, to how do you feel about your financial future, and how do you feel about the financial markets? So just 2 questions, as you can see here. So in this case, I only sent 1. If there were multiple, there would be multiple listed here. How does James and Sarah feel about the markets? Well, maybe a little bit iffy based on recent past, but how do they feel about the financial future? Well, they gave that a thumbs up or a green check mark. So it's an email, and then after they complete it, they do get some information that looks like this on the screen here. Long-term outcome, they get the risk number on the portfolio, and they actually get some stress test information, maybe more than they would digest, but they do get that as part of the check-in process. And then the advisor gets a note saying their check-in has been completed. That information is then recorded here. And it's kind of a lightweight way to check in with clients. If you alert them to the fact that the email might come, either on a regular basis or on an ad hoc basis, you can really keep in touch in between client reviews and then have that historical bit of information here about how they're feeling.
So I see that it's set up for like a default on-demand monthly and quarterly. can you change the monthly and quarterly to like maybe once every 6 months or once a year or?
Yeah, so you can't today, and definitely recent discussion with the product team, they talked about improving or adding to the capability. This is really first or second implementation, and it's gotten quite a bit of traction, so we're getting a lot of questions like that. You can't today. You can either send it now or set it for 1 month or sorry, a monthly regular email or a quarterly regular email. If you wanted 6 monthly or annual, you could send it now on demand. It would require you to go into each profile. But look for more improvements along in this area, probably the next few months. It's gotten a lot of traction, and that idea to dial in the frequency is probably one of the most popular requests.
So okay, so then let's just say you send it on demand, check in now. The client answers those 2 questions, and then you said that they see everything else that's down below there. I'm assuming that somehow that gives them the ability to see if they're still happy with their risk score.
Well, it would report the risk score and report some performance on kind of like portfolios for that risk score. So it doesn't let them necessarily change it. They would have to email the advisor and say, hey, this kind of motivates me to have a look at my risk number, my score on the platform. You could do that. A related point is actually something called the client dashboard. And I'm going to log into client dashboard, which I didn't discuss earlier, but it's related to this point. We do have a client dashboard with a couple of bits of information. One, the risk number and the retirement map. But it also does let the client retake the questionnaire. So if you want to update the risk number. So if you want to give that power, 1, the insight, and then 2, the power for the client to do that, you can do that by sharing the client dashboard with them, where they can see their retirement map, their portfolio value and the risk number, the accounts that make up that total portfolio value, and then some detail around the positions in the account as well. So that's the dashboard, kind of related to check-ins, or certainly related to your question around check-ins. But with check-ins itself, there's no way that the client can then retake the questionnaire outside of an email to the advisor saying, hey, I'd really like to kind of think twice about my risk number on the portfolio.
So the advisor is going to get an email coming back saying that the client did the check-in, and what exactly is the advisor going to see, and what are they to gain from that? So
the view you see here is what the advisor sees. So they would get the notice from an email that the client completed the check-in. They may log in right away and say, I'd like to see a little bit more detail around what the response was. Although I think the email includes the response as well. But this would let them compare the recent response to the past responses. Has somebody gone from 2 green check marks for the past 10 months to 2 red X's? You might want to call the client at that point. So it gives you some insight into their situation, and then the advisor sees everything here. So the advisor sees the check-in history, the frequency, when the next one is due, all this information about past performance on strategies like these, as well as stress test information that the client would have seen. So kind of an encapsulation of what the client would have seen, in addition to the historical information that this particular client has supplied via check-ins over time. That's what the advisor sees. So a nice record, and really, the aim here is to help an advisor prioritize, identify those clients that are kind of, drifting into a state where they need some guidance, they need some help, they need some advice. If everything's okay, a month in, month out, or quarter in, quarter out, maybe you don't need to have an additional review with them. But this helps you ascertain whether, their situation has changed. And it does it in.
Hey, Brad, I got a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, this is James Bradley. I got a question. So I like what Mark touched on, was having all of the premier platform models kind of loaded within our Riskalyze, because whenever updates need to be made, I always have to go back and make adjustments. So if they could, I guess, be automatically updated or refreshed or whatnot, that'd be awesome. Okay. And I apologize, I have to step away for one moment, but maybe you touched on this, maybe it's been updated, I'm not too sure, but Is there a way now within the Riskalyze to have a client do a risk tolerance based upon each account instead of having to create multiple layers for a specific client? Because I have clients that they're, retirement accounts, they're balls to the wall. But when it comes to their non-qualified cash accounts, something much more conservative. So when I do an overall thing, it gives me one risk score, but I'm looking to see, do a risk tolerance from one client's profile and say, do questionnaire for 401k, do one for their non-qual, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, so you may have missed the point about householding. Well, it's not just the householding capability. We call it multiple opinion because it really addresses a few situations, one of them with yours here. So in the case of the household example here with Sarah and James, each of the individuals completed a risk questionnaire. You could send out 3 questionnaires if let's say James has 3 accounts and Sarah's not in the picture, but you want kind of a goal-oriented assessment of his risk tolerance for each of the individual accounts. So I could add a questionnaire. We kind of do this on the fly. So client name, maybe James here, or it could be James's 401k, just as a way to track this. So all of this is up to you how you'd like to track it. But yes, simple answer is yes. You can have a risk questionnaire for one individual or a household for each account they have. You can keep track of those, have a record here. You do need to reconcile it for the household at some point. And we give you those tools where you could say, well, what I'd like to do is take in 50 and an 82 and split the difference, or I'd like to make that a 70. That's about right. But need not be a husband and wife situation. It could be the accounts, the risk questionnaires for each individual account. It works the same way. It would just require you to make notations slightly differently and come up with a system to track that, not just name of the client, but the account name as well.
Okay.
And this is part of the core product. So this is one of the things we released, I think, in January, that we've got access to it today. Have a play with it, and if you have any questions, let me know. But it does let you send multiple questionnaires out. Those questionnaires can be for different purposes, and then you keep track of all of those. You can have multiple questionnaires out at once, where before you couldn't do that, and then you can keep track of multiple questionnaires, and then of course you need to reconcile it to generate that number at the top level.
All right.
I have a question about integration. This is Marty.
Okay. Yeah, hi.
Hi, I currently have integration, and it's with Redtail and probably CIR. So can you do more than under the base plan? Can you do more integrations? Like, could I do my client's 401k plan, or only in bulk?
No, you can. So you could have multiple integrations established. You can use. Yeah, it's quite complicated. You can have different integrations feeding different client profiles or client accounts. You could have multiple integrations in effect at a given client. If you want to feed your CRM in addition to pulling from the custodial feed, so you have a lot of power to set up customizations as you need to. All the information doesn't have to come from one source or go to one source. And in fact, if you wanted to control, let's say in this case, let's say James and Sarah, the integrations need to be different for their account versus all the others. Well, you can do that. You could go and manage their integrations at their client profile level. And I've got a couple in place, maybe Redtail and my custodial account. I could put those in place. They could be different here for James and Sarah than they are for the others. But you have to set them all up once. All the integrations are available as part of the core platform. There's no addition.
Good. I didn't realize that. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, really powerful. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions about that. Because it can get a little confusing. You have to decide. Sometimes you have to decide a priority in terms of where you want what information to come from. It's not too difficult, but the more integrations they have, the more complicated it can get. But yeah, they're all there, available, part of the subscription fee.
Brad, can you go back to the heat map for a minute and maybe show the benefit of diversification through the heat map? I think that could be easily overlooked.
Yeah, no, I agree. I went into the portfolio, James and Sarah's portfolio. They have the 3 accounts. Let me collapse them so a little bit easier to see. And one is the bulk of it. But we could look at the heat map and we could say, well, we know, we're going to expand the accounts and turn on the heat map. So we got a risk number of 67. You know, maybe that everybody's, you know, got a complete understanding of that. But they may want to understand, well, which individual securities or which accounts are driving that risk number. Of course, it can be dollar weighted, but we know risk isn't 100% dollar weighted. There's correlations, there's different risk levels of the individual securities. So turning on the heat map gives you a few things. It gives you the risk number of each position, as well as then a visual. The bars give you an understanding of where the return is coming from in the portfolio, where the risk in red is coming from. And you say, well, what's the benefit from a diversification perspective? Well, you'd like to see all your bars being, let's say, the same or of similar magnitude, right? In this case, you say, well, that AGG, that's really not contributing much to return, certainly not contributing much to risk, but oh yes, contributing a lot to yield, we know that. But it gives you that line of thinking about, well, why do I have that position in the portfolio? And also then where is the other risk in the portfolio coming from? Say, well, we got a lot from commodities and a lot from real estate, of course. That's kind of intuitive. But if one of those positions had an extraordinary amount of risk, you might say, well, we should probably consider replacing it with something else. And this is where kind of the story about alternatives comes into play here. Say, well, let's get rid of commodities and perhaps replace them with alternatives. But you could, in fact, you could do that here. We could begin adding those investments, reducing perhaps the position in commodities right here, and we could begin to rebuild this view in light of the changes you're proposing to make to the portfolio. But I would say diversification, you'd just want to see you'd want to see the bars, whether they're green or red, be roughly the same order of magnitude if you're thinking about risk diversification and return diversification. You don't want too much concentration in any one area. So hopefully that helped. And then there is a more pointed way to look at in the stats module. If we go back to there is very much that view of saying, well, if we took away all the correlations, benefits of the correlations, we would have a risk number of 81. But this portfolio has obviously a pretty good diversification, here, where we've diversified 14 points on the risk number scale. But these are all the portfolio analysis tools: risk reward heat maps, stress tests, scenarios, which are customized stress tests, are all part of the core product, and the stats module is part of that premier package. But most of the portfolio analysis tools are available to you today, and you get this detail. I always like the story around the advisors who really make this an interactive part of conversations with clients. You don't want the clients to necessarily design the portfolio, but if you're trying to illustrate a point, trying to help them understand the benefit of making a change, this is one way to do it. There's not a lot of complexity here, and once you get an understanding of the green bars and the red bars and the yellow bars for diversification, the conversation can flow quite nicely. Any other questions about core capabilities or things we talked about here today? The model portfolios, I'll follow up on that. That's a really nice capability when you go into proposals. If we had the model portfolios loaded, build a new portfolio here, just to kind of highlight the point. I think in a couple clicks I can get there. Where as you build a portfolio and those portfolios include the models, then we're going to copy a model. So copy a model is one way to populate an account. It will literally go to my models, which we haven't looked at this, but I've got a list of my models that maybe I created, or my models can also include those that other people have shared with me, including the enterprise. So you could decide, great, that's the one that I want, and I'm just going to copy all the holdings from that. You don't have to worry about when they were updated. Just know that they've been updated. They are the most recent set of holdings. And I just now populated this account in a couple clicks with that model portfolio because they're shared out to me, or perhaps they're my models that I've created. But it's nicer when they're shared out to you, and you just know that you always have access to the latest model portfolios. And you can create sleeves as well. Model portfolio capability here is pretty nice. You could have equity in fixed sleeves and commodities. Instead of copying the positions here as I've done, you could treat each one as a sleeve. So there's a lot of ways to design model portfolios if you rely upon them heavily and you have a lot of structure around how you build model portfolios. The platform can accommodate them.
Brad?
Yeah.
Okay, so if, for instance, we're using SEI and they have their own proprietary models, can we import those in without having to update them? Is there a way to do that?
You can. You do need to import them one by one. So let me go back. Let me go to the top and go to the model portfolios. So so there's a list of model portfolios. If you want to create a new one, you have to create a new portfolio. You can build those SEI portfolios here yourself using kind of drag and drop and using CSV files. So there are ways to make it more efficient. But if they're not being shared out to you, you do need to build them. But you can do it pretty readily. And then once you've built them and updated them, again, it doesn't matter the source of those. You can have prepared those model portfolios yourself, or they can be shared to you from somebody else. You can use them in the same workflow. Really, the question is who does them?
I thought you could import them in directly from SEI.
We used to. I don't know if that service is still up and running. Let me find out. We used to have that for sure.
Yeah. That would be interesting.
Okay.
You know, nobody wants to manually continue to update those. That's ridiculous.
Right.
I guess.
No, exactly. And sorry, who asked the question? Apologies. Name. Okay. I will. I'll get back on that one. I just want to make sure we still have that in place. But right, we do have. There are a number of providers like SEI that provide those model portfolios, and then a lot of enterprises that do as well. So a lot of flexibility around models. If you bring that level of structure to how you propose and how you track, it's really quite a nice setup. It can be manual if you do need to do the updates yourself. It can be manual, but especially sharing out from home office, it's a way to leverage people's time for sure.
How do we find out? Do you have some kind of a list of the people that you do with provide their models to your?
Yeah, and in fact, if you go, so I went to Models and Partner Store. So Partner Store is a list of model portfolios supply with our partners that anyone can have access to actually. So you see the names in front of you. I mean, there's some pretty common names here. I think SEI is no longer part of the program. They used to be. But we've got a number of, there they are, SEI, and I'm here at the bottom. So if I were to click into one of these, I'll go into PIMCO just because it's in front of me. They have different families of models, and you can subscribe to them. Most of them don't have a fee. Some of the more specific providers here do. But PIMCO wouldn't. You just need to subscribe to them so that you get them in your model list, and we don't automatically assume you want to subscribe to all of them. So you just have to come in and pick those that you want to look at. You can look at each one. There should be a link at the top to some of the research behind the model portfolios. So this is another way to find model portfolios that you're comfortable with. You can copy those model portfolios. You can tweak them and adjust them, and it's all sorts of ways you can treat these as building blocks as you put together kind of a standard set of models. Some of them can be. Some of the flavors of those can come from some of these providers here. You put together some really nice model portfolios for different situations, leveraging these. I know, like AlphaDroid is a smaller, from an AUM perspective, smaller provider. You do need a subscription to their core service before you can get access to their portfolios. But almost all of these are part of the subscription fee that you pay. There's no additional fee. Yeah, model portfolios and integrations, probably two of the more underutilized parts of the platform. And then from a module perspective, if I go back to clients, I would guess retirement map is also not used quite as heavily. And for e-money users out there, there can be some overlap, but that's a capability, at least from a client interaction perspective, can be quite a nice basis for a client discussion around the things they need to trade off. as they're looking at their retirement from a big picture perspective. All right. Any other questions? You can always reach out to me. We've got a support line. You can reach them in multiple ways. We have coaching sessions through the support team as well. If you like to drill down in some of these areas, just let us know. We've got a really strong service team. I'd love to help you guys. If there's anything I can do, if you don't know who to go to, let me know. I'll make sure that we get the question answered. Whether I do it or have someone else do it, we'll make sure we take care of you guys.
Great, thank you, Brad.
Great, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Brad.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Yep, bye-bye.